Welcome back. Tonight, we're drifting slowly into the complete lore of the Amnesia timeline, a vast, shadowed chronicle of ancient orbs and vitae that span dimensions, binding alien empires to earthly ruins in a cycle of pursuit, betrayal, and endless forgetting. Born in the blue-hued depths of a distant realm long before humanity's dawn, it began with one species' quest for power, harnessing storms and blood to fuel portals that invited horrors like the Shadow, a guardian that stalked across worlds, twisting fates and scarring lands. But as empires crumbled and relics scattered to Earth's forgotten tombs, it wove through human lives. From barrenest rituals and crumbling castles to industrial machines grinding souls to desert crashes unleashing ghouls. Each thread unraveling minds and birthing monsters from the very essence of fear and memory's erasure. From the unified dynasty that stretched across realms to the exiles haunting Prussian woods, to the visions of wars averted through sacrifice, to the bunkers where cursed waters birthed beasts amid artillery's roar. We'll trace every quiet turn of this interwoven saga step by step. This is the story of how a pursuit of transcendence became a veil of oblivion, and how one dimension's fall echoed through time, pulling wanderers into its gentle, unrelenting grasp. Whether you're uncovering these details for the first time, letting familiar echoes pull you deeper into rest, or simply allowing the tale to wash over you like a fading whisper as sleep takes hold, this will carry you through the full, unbroken history of the Amnesia timeline. Before we begin, feel free to like and subscribe, but only if you enjoy this kind of slow, immersive storytelling that unfolds like a dream. And let me know in the comments where you're listening from and what time it is for you. It's always a quiet wonder to see the same story weaving through different corners of the world, one hushed night at a time. Let's begin. Long before humanity emerged from the evolutionary cradle of Earth, a distant dimension harbored an alien species known as the Otherworlders, beings who mirrored human form yet bore a distinctive blue hue across their skin and minds of unparalleled intellect. In this unknown realm, far removed from our cosmos, they forged a civilization that spanned vast territories, their society thriving on ingenuity that blurred the lines between technology and ancient mysticism. These Otherworlders harnessed the raw fury of frequent lightning storms to fuel their machinery, channeling natural energies into factories and power plants that sustain their daily existence. This reliance on the environment's whims drove their alchemists and scientists to innovate relentlessly, ensuring survival in a world where storms dictated progress. Yet such advancements bred arrogance, setting the stage for internal divisions that threatened their unity as factions vied for control over resources and knowledge. Initially fragmented into rival groups, the Otherworlders found cohesion under the guidance of Tahib, a visionary who rose as a political and royal figure to rally her divided kin through strategic alliances and shared purpose. Tahib established a dynasty, a sovereign empire that centralized power and fostered collaboration among their greatest minds. This unification allowed for monumental feats where alchemical pursuits intertwined with scientific exploration, creating devices that appeared enchanted yet operated on principles eons ahead of human comprehension. The dynasty's expansion relied on taming their world's natural forces, but as lightning proved inconsistent, it compelled a shift toward more reliable energies, sparking research into orbs and vitae, substances derived from stressed mammalian blood. This pivot not only stabilized their infrastructure, but also deepened their ethical quandaries as the pursuit of reliability began to encroach on moral boundaries, foreshadowing the Empire's darker experiments. Tahib's dynasty's rise marked a turning point, transforming a scattered species into a dominant force that stretched across their dimension, with temples and gates extending influence to other realms. Under Tahib's legacy, the Otherworlders prioritized alchemy and interdimensional travel, capturing beasts from foreign worlds to extract vitae and power their portals. This era of prosperity, however, sowed seeds of downfall. the Empire's growth demanded ever greater resources, leading to the capture and torment of living creatures for energy. Such practices ignited dissent among a rogue faction who viewed the exploitation as immoral and plotted to dismantle the system. The dynasty's hubris, born from their godlike intellect, blinded them to the consequences, inviting chaos that would one day unravel their carefully constructed world, leaving ruins haunted by the echoes of their ambition. As the Otherworlders' reliance on lightning storms revealed its limitations during periods of calm weather, their alchemists turned to more stable alternatives, initiating research into orbs as vessels for concentrated energy. This shift stemmed from the need for reliability in powering their vast machinery, where intermittent storms had caused disruptions in factories and essential systems. Under the guidance of leading alchemist Temu, experiments focused on harnessing vitae, a potent substance secreted in the blood of mammals when subjected to intense stress, which proved far more consistent than atmospheric forces. The discovery of vitae not only addressed immediate energy shortages, but also opened ethical dilemmas, as obtaining it required inducing anguish in living creatures, a practice that began with captured beasts from distant realms. This innovation marked a pivotal advancement, allowing the Empire to sustain its growth without the whims of nature dictating their progress, though it sowed seeds of moral unrest among those who questioned the cost. With interdimensional travel perfected through gate constructions, the Otherworlders ventured into new worlds, seeking to expand their domain and secure resources beyond their native dimension. These portals, powered initially by orbs infused with vitae, enabled expeditions that brought back exotic beasts for further experimentation, directly fueling the vitae extraction process. The captured creatures were subjected to controlled torments in specialized facilities, yielding the energy needed to maintain the gates and support Imperial infrastructure. This expansionist approach not only bolstered their technological sphere, but also intensified internal debates, as the reliance on suffering for power clashed with the species' intellectual ideals. Consequences rippled through their society, fostering a rogue element that viewed such methods as unsustainable, while the Empire's reach grew, intertwining exploration with exploitation in ways that would later invite rebellion. Vitae harvested from these beasts was carefully stored in specialized containers designed to preserve the energy's potency for later use in orbs and machinery. Temu's team refined the orb creation process, crafting spheres that could hold immense power, culminating in their application to stabilize portals for sustained travel. This development elevated their civilization's capabilities, enabling seamless transit between realms and accelerating scientific research. Yet the emphasis on vitae extraction as a core mechanism heightened the Empire's vulnerability, as dependence on biological sources introduced risks of supply interruption. The leap forward in portal technology, while a triumph of alchemy, inadvertently set the stage for unforeseen intrusions, as the energies manipulated began to attract entities from beyond their control, foreshadowing the Empire's brush with destruction. In the heart of their alchemical laboratories, the Otherworlders under Temu's direction activated an orb-powered portal, seeking to bridge realms for further expansion and resource acquisition. This bold experiment unfolded as planned at first, with energies converging to open a gateway into uncharted territories. Yet an unforeseen anomaly disrupted the harmony. A viscous, reddish sludge slithered through the portal, its form expanding rapidly upon contact with surfaces, staining and replicating itself in an aggressive cascade. The alchemists, startled by this intrusion, swiftly severed the orb's power supply, collapsing the portal and containing the entity within a sealed chamber for observation. This decisive action stemmed from the immediate threat it posed, as the sludge exhibited hostility toward all living beings, devouring organic matter and growing in mass. The incident not only halted the day's research, but also introduced a new variable into their scientific pursuits, compelling a reevaluation of interdimensional risks and the safeguards needed to protect their empire from such invasive forces. Dubbed the Shadow for its elusive, creeping nature, the entity drew intense scrutiny from Temu's subordinate Kita, who was assigned to lead investigative efforts in a dedicated facility. Observations revealed the Shadow's affinity for the orbs, gravitating toward their radiant energy as if compelled by an innate hunger, which explained its emergence during the portal test. This attraction caused the sludge to pulse and expand when near the spheres, feeding on the vital forces they contained and leaving behind corrupted residues. Kita's team noted how the Shadow's properties could dissolve organic tissues, transforming them into extensions of itself, a process that raised alarms about potential containment breaches. The research, driven by curiosity, inadvertently deepened the Empire's ethical divide, as the entity's destructive traits mirrored the vitae extraction methods already in use. This parallel not only fueled rebel sentiments, but also set in motion plans to harness the Shadow's essence, believing it could disrupt the immoral system sustaining their society. The Shadow's organic devouring behavior inspired Kita to extract its properties into a formula, envisioning a tool to sabotage the vitae harvesting operations that tormented captured beasts from distant realms. This development arose from the entity's ability to consume energies similar to vitae, offering a means to infect and dismantle the extraction machinery without direct confrontation. However, the rebels' adoption of this formula carried unforeseen risks, as tampering with such a volatile substance could amplify the Shadow's influence beyond control. The pursuit of this countermeasure intensified internal conflicts, with the Empire's leaders unaware of the brewing insurrection. Ultimately, the formula's creation not only empowered the dissenters, but also invited catastrophic repercussions, as its deployment would ripple through the dimensional gates, destabilizing the very foundations of their civilization and allowing the Shadow to escape its bonds. Venturing through their dimensional gates in search of new territories, the Otherworlders stumbled upon Earth, a world teeming with a species that bore a faint resemblance to their own, yet lacked the blue hue and advanced intellect. This discovery, driven by the Empire's insatiable need for expansion and vitae sources, led them to pull humans through the portals into their realm of blue lights and green expanses. The early humans, fierce and unyielding, resisted capture with primal weapons and cunning, slaying many Otherworlders in the process and forcing the invaders to adapt their tactics. Such resistance stemmed from humanity's innate drive for survival, turning initial scouting missions into costly battles that depleted the Empire's forces. The encounters not only highlighted the risks of interdimensional conquest, but also compelled the Otherworlders to innovate, transforming their approach to subjugation and ensuring future expeditions were better prepared, though at the expense of escalating moral decay within their society. To counter the humans' defiance, the Otherworlders exposed captives to their native waters, initiating a grotesque transformation that twisted the prisoners into loyal servants known as harvesters. As the waters coursed through their systems, black tendrils emerged beneath the skin, creeping around the skull's temples and piercing the eyes with blood streaming like sorrowful tears. This process, fueled by surges of negative emotions such as fear, anguish, and pain, caused irreversible changes, rendering the victims monstrous and obedient. The transformation's efficiency arose from the water's alchemical properties, which amplified suffering to break the human spirit completely. Once altered, these harvesters became tools of the Empire, their creation marking a grim escalation in exploitation that deepened the rebels' resolve to end such practices, while also expanding the Otherworlders' capacity for control over conquered worlds under the guidance of overseers in designated hunting grounds. The newly formed harvesters underwent rigorous training to hone their predatory instincts before being deployed back to Earth settlements, where they infiltrated human communities under cover of night, dragging terrified inhabitants, kicking and screaming, through the portals to the Otherworld's industrial estates. These captives endured systematic torture and experiments, their vitae drained to fuel the Empire's machinery and orbs. The cycle of abduction and extraction, born from the need to sustain imperial power, perpetuated endless suffering, with screams echoing through the estates as a constant reminder of the cost. This operation not only secured vital resources, but also intensified dissent among the otherworlders, as the audible anguish fueled plots against the dynasty, setting the Empire on a path toward internal fracture. Amid the echoing screams of tormented humans in the otherworld's industrial estates, a rogue faction of the species began to coalesce, driven by revulsion at the Empire's reliance on such brutality for vitae production. These dissenters, hidden among the alchemists and workers, plotted in secret against Empress Tahana, viewing the experiments on innocent captives as an unforgivable stain on their advanced society. The catalyst for their scheme emerged from Kita's ongoing research into the shadow, where he isolated properties that could consume organic energies akin to vitae, crafting a formula intended to infiltrate and dismantle the extraction facilities. This innovation stemmed from the shadow's innate ability to dissolve living matter, offering a non-violent means to halt the torment without direct confrontation. Yet the rebels' growing resolve invited peril, as whispers of insurrection reached the Empress's court, compelling heightened surveillance and fracturing loyalties within the Empire. The plot's formation not only challenged Tihana's authority, but also exposed the moral fissures deepened by the dynasty's pursuit of power, setting the stage for a confrontation that would test the civilization's foundations. During this turbulent period, Empress Ada faced a personal crisis that mirrored the Empire's ethical decay, as she entered labor only to discover her heir, Tihana, afflicted with a deadly disease. The physicians identified a single surgical intervention to save the child, but it demanded a sacrifice of immense cost, Ata's own vital organ to sustain Tihana's weakened form. Driven by maternal instinct, Ata consented, allowing the procedure that donated the organ, resulting in her death and Tihana's survival, though the young heir emerged frail and dependent on vast quantities of vitae to endure each day. This act of selflessness, performed in the royal chambers amid circulating orbs, ensured the bloodline's continuity, but at the price of Tihana's infertility, a revelation that plunged the population into mourning and amplified the rebels' grievances against the dynasty's vitae-driven excesses. The Empress's demise not only elevated Tihana to the throne, but also intensified the Empire's internal pressures, as the new ruler's vulnerability underscored the unsustainable toll of their technological ambitions. Crowned amid a ceremony encircled by glowing orbs, Empress Tahana inherited a realm teetering on unrest, her bitterness over her mother's sacrifice and her own infertility fueling a resolute stance against threats to the dynasty. Warned by advisors of the growing insurrection within the Empire's fortress, Tahana authorized military strikes to quash the rebels, deploying forces through the newly constructed dimensional gates to maintain order. This response arose from the need to protect the Empire's expanding temples in other worlds, sites crucial for scientific research and territorial control, where any disruption could halt vitae supplies essential for her survival. The escalation of conflict not only suppressed immediate dissent, but also strained resources as advisors pressed for solutions to her childless state, further isolating her amid the Empire's fractious politics. Ultimately, these struggles deepened the civilization's divisions, paving the way for sabotage that would exploit the very innovations sustaining their power, leading to unforeseen devastation across realms. As the Otherworld Empire extended its reach through dimensional gates, construction began on distant outposts, including the Tomb of Tin Hinan on Earth in the 4th century, a secure vault designed to house one of their precious orbs away from the core civilization. This decision arose from the need to safeguard vital artifacts amid growing internal threats, with the tomb's remote location ensuring isolation from potential sabotage. Workers transported the orb through a portal, embedding it within the structure's central chamber, where it rested undisturbed for centuries, its energies dormant yet potent. The tomb's creation not only preserved a key source of power but also marked the Empire's tentative foothold on Earth, a world that would later become a refuge for exiles. However, this expansion stretched resources thin, exacerbating tensions back home as the rebels' plots gained momentum, setting the stage for actions that would exploit these vulnerabilities and unravel the network of gates connecting their realms. For crimes lost to the annals of otherworld history, Alexander faced judgment before Empress Tahana, whose fury led her to exile him to Earth, stripped of his native form and confined to a human guise. This punishment, intended as a humiliating banishment, stemmed from Alexander's transgressions that enraged the Empress to the point of deriving satisfaction from his isolation. Transformed and cast through a portal to Algeria, Alexander adapted to his new existence, unaware that this exile would prove a fortuitous escape from the Empire's looming collapse. The decision not only removed a potential dissenter from the court, but also dispersed otherworld influence, allowing Alexander to rebuild in secrecy on Earth, where he would later establish Brennenburg Castle as his base. Yet this act of retribution highlighted Tihana's iron rule, further alienating factions within the Empire and accelerating the rebels' resolve to strike at the heart of her power. Armed with Kita's meticulously derived formula from the Shadow's essence, the rebels launched a daring operation infiltrating the palace to assassinate Tihana and dismantle the vitae regime. Though the attempt on her life failed, their injection of the formula into the extraction systems triggered an unforeseen chain reaction, the corrupted energies cascading through the dimensional gates to the Empire's core. This disruption, born from the formula's ability to corrupt organic and mechanical systems alike, led to widespread explosions that shattered infrastructure and claimed countless lives. The rebels' partial success not only crippled the extraction operations, but also sealed their fate. Surviving loyalists transformed into wraiths patrolling the ruins. In the aftermath, the Empire's once mighty civilization lay in tatters, its downfall a direct consequence of the internal strife that had festered unchecked, leaving echoes of regret amid the scarred landscapes. In the wake of the rebels' failed assassination of Empress Tahana, their sabotage of the orbs unleashed a devastating chain reaction that surged through the dimensional gates, shattering the Empire's core infrastructure and claiming lives across the civilization. This escalation, triggered by the formula's corruption of the orb's energies, transformed Kita's colleagues into ethereal wraiths, spectral guardians doomed to patrol the crumbling ruins of what was once a thriving realm. The one entrusted with deploying the formula deeper into the vitae systems perished under falling debris in the lower factories, halting the full infection and leaving pockets of the Empire's machinery intact amid the chaos. Such incomplete success not only spared some structures, but also amplified the survivors' despair, as the partial destruction exposed the fragility of their advanced society. The cataclysm's ripple effects deepened the Empire's fall, scattering remnants and forcing the few who endured to confront the ruins of their arrogance, where wraiths now wandered as eternal sentinels of the failed uprising. Through the distorted portals affected by the orb's backlash, fragments of the shadow broke free from its containment, slithering into the otherworld and onto Earth, where several orbs had been stored in remote sites like the tomb of Tin Hinan. This escape, caused by the unstable energies cascading from the sabotage, allowed the reddish entity to feast on fleeing civilians, its mass expanding and scarring the landscapes with crimson veins that corrupted all they touched. In Algeria, the Shadow's partial manifestation pursued guardians of the orbs, reclaiming artifacts while leaving trails of devastation in human settlements. The entity's rampage not only decimated populations but also sealed off access to key portals, isolating survivors in pockets of ruin. This unleashing marked a turning point, as the Shadow's unchecked growth transformed once vibrant worlds into haunted wastelands, underscoring the perils of tampering with forces beyond control and hastening the Empire's irreversible decline. Amid the scarred remnants of the otherworld, Kita emerged as one of the few survivors, his body sustained by scavenged vitae supplies even as guilt consumed him for the formula's role in the destruction. Viewing himself as the architect of betrayal against his own kind, Kita wandered the ruins, begging forgiveness from the echoes of the fallen, his pleas lost in the windswept desolation. This self-imposed exile arose from the realization that his creation intended to end bloodshed had instead carved a path of greater carnage, leaving him to plot anew from the shadows of the crumbling civilization. Kita's survival not only prolonged his torment, but also preserved a thread of resistance as he sought ways to dismantle remaining vitae operations with what little resources remained. In this isolation, his reflections deepened the narrative of regret, highlighting how individual ambitions could unravel an entire species, leaving behind a legacy of haunted silence. Centuries after the Otherworld Empire's collapse in the early 16th century, Heinrich Cornelius Agrippa, a scholar of alchemy and the arcane, ventured into the hidden Mithraic temple in the Prussian woods near Altstadt. Drawn by whispers of ancient relics, he navigated the dark tunnels and catacombs until reaching a central chamber where an orb rested on a pedestal, its surface humming with otherworldly energy. Agrippa's curiosity compelled him to lift the artifact, but this act awakened its guardian, the Shadow, a crimson entity that pursued him relentlessly through the town streets and across the Alps. The chase stemmed from the orb's inherent protection, branding Agrippa as a thief and invoking the Shadow's wrath, which tore at the world in its path. This encounter not only marked Agrippa's first brush with interdimensional forces, but also set a precedent for the dangers of mishandling such relics, leaving him shaken and the orb momentarily in his grasp before panic forced him to drop it, allowing the Shadow to reclaim its charge and retreat to the depths. Years later, at the age of 14, Johann Weyer became Agrippa's student, immersing himself in studies of the orbs under his mentor's direction, alongside explorations of arcane arts that promise control over their immense power. Weyer's education arose from Agrippa's survival of the Shadow's pursuit, passing on knowledge of the orb's capabilities without directly alerting the entity anew. Through diligent practice, Weyer learned to harness the artifact's energies, gathering several over 29 years by locating them in hidden sites across Europe, his caution ensuring the Shadow remained dormant. This accumulation expanded their understanding of the orb's properties, revealing potentials for rituals and portals, yet it also heightened the risks as each retrieval tested the boundaries of the Guardian's vigilance. Weyer's successes not only preserved the relics for study, but also laid groundwork for future alliances, bridging scholarly pursuits with the Empire's lingering echoes on Earth. In the early 16th century, Weyer's quest led him to a church in the French city of Calais, where an orb lay deep within its catacombs, its presence confirmed through maps and royal blessings that provided French soldiers as escorts. Descending the claustrophobic tunnels, Weyer seized the artifact, an orb that stirred ancient energies, but this disturbance summoned the Shadow from the darkness, slaying the accompanying soldiers in a swift assault. The entity's emergence resulted from the orb's activation, forcing Weyer to flee to the surface, his terror a direct consequence of underestimating the Guardian's reach. With the soldier's sacrifice buying him time, Weyer escaped, securing the orb and deepening his resolve to master its secrets. This retrieval not only enriched his collection, but also underscored the orb's perilous allure, influencing subsequent explorations and the alliances that would shape encounters with figures like Alexander. In the turbulent span of the 16th century, Brennenburg Castle succumbed to a devastating fire that ravaged its ancient structure, leaving behind charred ruins amid the Prussian wilderness. Alexander, exiled from the otherworld and now inhabiting a human form, seized this moment to rebuild the castle from its foundations, transforming it into his primary stronghold on Earth. This reconstruction arose from his need for a secure base to pursue vitae extraction and rituals, allowing him to blend into human society while concealing his true origins. Masquerading as a Prussian baron hailing from the Rhineland, Alexander wove tales of a distant family awaiting his return, which deflected local suspicions and granted him the solitude required for his experiments. The castle's revival not only restored its imposing halls and cellars, but also positioned Alexander to forge alliances, drawing scholars intrigued by arcane knowledge. This strategic rebirth extended his lifespan through vitae, yet it deepened his isolation as the fire's aftermath symbolized the fragile veil between his alien past and earthly facade, setting the groundwork for encounters that would entwine him with seekers of forbidden power. Alexander's path intersected with Heinrich Cornelius Agrippa and his student Johann Weyer, forming a tenuous collaboration driven by shared fascination with the orb's mysteries. Together, they journeyed to a Mithraic temple hidden beneath the Prussian woods, navigating its shadowed tunnels to recover an orb, a relic pulsing with interdimensional energy. This retrieval stemmed from Alexander's desperation to harness vitae artificially in Brennenburg's laboratories, where initial attempts faltered, producing hazardous fumes that destabilized other ingredients. The failure compelled him to relocate these volatile substances to the wine cellar, a cooler, more contained space that mitigated risks while allowing continued experimentation. Their alliance not only yielded the orb, but also advanced Alexander's understanding of vitae synthesis, though the process's dangers foreshadowed ethical compromises. This partnership, born of mutual ambition, ultimately strained under Alexander's manipulations, leading to betrayals that echoed through the castle's rebuilt walls and perpetuated cycles of torment. As Europe plunged into the 30 Years' War in 1618, a conflict ignited by religious and political strife following the crowning of Frederick IX as the Winter King, Alexander exploited the chaos to secure subjects for his vitae pursuits. Deserters from his employ, abandoning posts amid widespread famine and disease, were captured and transported to Brennenburg, where torture and experiments reshaped them into loyal servants known as gatherers, hulking grunts and brutish variants patrolling the castle's depths. This transformation arose from Alexander's need for enforcers to maintain secrecy, their grotesque forms a direct result of alchemical infusions that twisted bones and minds alike. The gatherers' presence sparked folklore among nearby towns, whispers of monstrous guardians haunting the woods, which deterred intruders and preserved Alexander's operations. Yet this era of opportunistic horror intensified local fears, sowing seeds of suspicion that would later draw investigators to the castle, unraveling the fragile peace Alexander had constructed amid the war's broader devastation. As the 17th century wore on, Alexander turned his alchemical pursuits toward extracting vitae from animals, importing specimens to Brennenburg Castle in hopes of yielding the essence needed for his return to the otherworld. These experiments, conducted in the castle's laboratories after his failed attempts at artificial synthesis, involved subjecting the creatures to controlled torments. But the results proved insufficient in both quantity and potency. This shortfall arose from the animals' limited capacity to produce vitae compared to sentient beings, compelling Alexander to conclude that human subjects were essential for viable yields. The realization not only redirected his methods toward more drastic measures, but also deepened his reliance on secrecy, as procuring humans demanded alliances with those willing to overlook moral boundaries. In 1701, this led to the founding of the Order of the Black Eagle, a clandestine group that included Wilhelm von Guericke, born into the House of Guericke in 1670, who joined seeking Alexander's recommendation at the Prussian royal court. Wilhelm's involvement marked a turning point, providing Alexander with a steady supply of captives while entangling the order in the castle's dark operations, consequences that would soon unravel their fragile pact. At age 32, Wilhelm signed a 3-year contract within the order's inner sanctum, committing to arrests that delivered innocents to Brennenburg's dungeons for Alexander's vitae extraction. Between 1702 and late summer 1704, Wilhelm orchestrated 39 arrests, escorting prisoners to the castle's depths, where they joined over 100 others in cells echoing with cries and infested with rats. This operation stemmed from Alexander's urgent need for vitae to fuel his rituals, with each tortured soul providing the adrenaline-derived essence that sustained his ageless form. The contract's success not only bolstered Alexander's experiments, but also heightened risks. As Wilhelm's imprudent behavior, marked by reckless arrests, including an arsonist named Emil in late September 1704, drew unwanted scrutiny from authorities like a sheriff from Königsberg. Wilhelm's overreach ultimately strained the alliance, prompting Alexander to intervene decisively and preserve his secrecy, a move that transformed the dynamic from partnership to betrayal and left Wilhelm's fate sealed in the castle's shadows. In a calculated act of retribution, Alexander lured Wilhelm and his men to the wine cellar, poisoning their food and drink with a substance that twisted their anatomies into new gatherers under his control. This transformation, resulting from the poison's alchemical effects on bones and flesh, arose from Wilhelm's indiscretions that threatened exposure of the operations. The men's screams filled the cellar as their bodies contorted, emerging as obedient brutes patrolling Brennenburg, a direct consequence of their leader's hubris. Decades later, in 1774, Paul Gottschalk delved into Wilhelm's disappearance, tracing clues from a barn fire in Altstadt to records in a local church and witness accounts from an inn in Königsberg. Gottschalk's investigation led him to confront Alexander at Brennenburg, where he vanished without trace, his fate echoing Wilhelm's as another victim of the castle's hidden horrors. These betrayals not only eliminated threats, but also perpetuated Alexander's isolation, weaving a web of silence around the castle that endured amid Prussia's shifting landscapes. As workers expanded Brennenburg Castle's sewers in the late 18th century, they uncovered a poisonous fungus that spread rapidly among the prisoners and Alexander's men, tainting the vitae extracted from recent torture sessions. This outbreak, arising from the damp, confined tunnels where unstable ingredients had been relocated, corrupted the essence's purity and halted progress on creating a traveler's locket, a device intended to harness interdimensional energies for Alexander's return home. In response, Alexander devoted resources to developing a vaccine, meticulously testing compounds in the laboratories to neutralize the fungus and restore the extraction process. The plague's containment not only delayed his rituals, but also underscored the fragility of his operations, as spoiled vitae batches wasted precious subjects and forced a temporary reliance on stored reserves. This setback deepened Alexander's urgency, pushing him to refine his methods amid the castle's echoing halls, where the air grew thick with the scent of decay, and the faint cries of afflicted captives lingered as a reminder of unchecked ambition's toll. By 1799, Alexander, with assistance from Heinrich Cornelius Agrippa and Johann Weyer, completed a rudimentary traveler's locket, a contraption fueled by orb energies that reignited his longing for the otherworld and a reunion with his lost beloved. During the activation ceremony in the orb chamber, the portal flickered open, its shimmering veil promising escape. But Weyer hurled himself through in a bid to revoke Alexander's exile, depleting the device's power and stranding him on the other side. Enraged by this interference, Alexander turned on Agrippa, encasing his essence in a lifeless husk to preserve their connection to the otherworld, a cruel act born from Weyer's refusal to aid without Agrippa's release. Weyer's subsequent transmission of a tonic recipe through the portal went unheeded, as Alexander prioritized his own schemes over loyalty. This betrayal not only severed their alliance, but also left Agrippa in eternal limbo, his pleas echoing faintly through the castle, a testament to the personal cost woven into Alexander's quest for transcendence. Alexander's attempt to summon another portal strained the orb beyond its limits, shattering it into 6 jagged pieces scattered across Brennenburg's transept and choir, forcing him to abandon the ritual and begin anew from fragments. This failure, resulting from the device's overload during the unstable ceremony, compounded his desperation amid Europe's shifting landscapes. Meanwhile, Daniel was born in 1818 in Canterbury, Kent, enduring an abusive father that drove him to relocate to Mayfair, London, where he sought refuge in scholarly pursuits. In 1824, his sister Hazel arrived, followed by Justine Florbel's birth in 1828, whose mother perished in labor, marking parallel threads of loss. Daniel's resilience grew as he supported Hazel through her terminal illness diagnosed by Dr. Tate, reading to her from his collection despite schoolyard bullying from Henry Bedello. This familial bond, tested by Hazel's prognosis limiting her to age 12, shaped Daniel's character, leading him years later to join Herbert on an Algerian expedition, a journey that would entwine his fate with ancient relics and Brennenburg's shadows. In the quiet confines of his family's home in Canterbury during the early 1830s, Daniel navigated the hardships of an abusive father and relentless schoolyard taunts from Henry Bedello, finding solace in his bond with his younger sister Hazel, born in 1824 amid the era's medical uncertainties. Hazel's diagnosis with a dangerous disease by Dr. Tate, who predicted she would not survive past age 12, confined her to bed rest year-round, even through summer's warmth, prompting Daniel to read from his book collection after assisting their father with work. This routine arose from Daniel's growing courage, forged when he struck Bedello with a rock during a confrontation, an act that quelled the bullying but left him wary of reprisals. By 1839, Hazel's unexpected survival to age 15 defied expectations, though it drained their parents emotionally and physically, leading to her permanent placement in Canterbury's hospice. Before departing, she embraced Daniel, wishing him luck on his Algerian journey, framing it as a grand adventure that would unknowingly draw him into ancient perils, strengthening his resolve amid familial trials. Across the Channel in France that same year, archaeologist Herbert penned a letter to Justine Florbel's father, inquiring about her unruly behavior while subtly seeking his endorsement to bolster chances of entering Algeria for relic hunts. This correspondence stemmed from Herbert's need for influential backing amid colonial restrictions, masking his true intent behind polite concern. Justine, born in 1828 after her mother's death in labor alongside a stillborn brother, had endured a lonely childhood marked by her father's experiments on her mental disorder, which isolated her from her friend Clarice and culminated in deep-seated rage by 1838. On February 2, 1839, Justine's pent-up fury toward her father's torment led her to confront him as he composed a letter to Herbert, an act that freed her from his control and granted her the Florbel estate's wealth as the sole heir. This inheritance not only ended her isolation but also removed a key figure Herbert had hoped to leverage, shifting the expedition's preparations and intertwining personal vendettas with scholarly pursuits. By March 1839, Daniel and Herbert converged in Algeria, their paths aligned through shared archaeological ambitions, arriving on May 14th to study the tomb of Tin Hinan after final preparations in Algiers. The following day, Herbert reunited with his old friend Farage, who intended to provide Wyer's detailed map of the tomb, only for French soldiers under Captain Ambroise, sent to quell a local rebellion, to kill Farage and his nephew Bakri in the ensuing chaos. This violence, rooted in colonial tensions, forced Herbert to seek refuge with Daniel at their hotel, where Ambroise later delivered the map and a star-shaped soapstone as a token, its significance tied to ancient wards. With the artifacts in hand, the pair proceeded to the tomb the next morning via caravan, reaching it by nightfall and taking shelter in the nearby Fort al-Mamarou. Their arrival not only advanced the quest for relics, but also exposed them to Earth's echoes of otherworld influences, foreshadowing encounters with the shadow that would bind their fate to interdimensional legacies. Deep within the ancient tomb of Tin Hinan on May 17, 1839, Daniel ventured with a small group of men from Herbert's expedition, drawn by the promise of relics hidden in its shadowed chambers. As they navigated the narrow passages, a sudden collapse trapped Daniel alone in an antechamber, the air growing thick with dust and the faint echo of distant calls for help. In those tense moments, he gathered scattered pieces of an orb, their surfaces pulsing with an unearthly glow that seemed to ward off the encroaching darkness. This act of collection, born from desperation amid the tomb's crumbling stones, inadvertently branded him with the Shadow's mark, an invisible tether that summoned the guardian entity to pursue any who tampered with such artifacts. Rescued after what felt like an eternity, but was mere hours, Daniel emerged visibly injured, the orb fragments clutched tightly. Their acquisition not only advanced the expedition's goals, but also ignited a chain of hauntings that would shadow his every step, transforming a scholarly pursuit into a personal nightmare. Back at the camp near Fort Al-Mamaru, Herbert and his men gathered around fires, sharing stories and laughter under the desert stars, unaware that the Shadow's tendrils had followed the orb's disturbance through the night. The entity crept toward them, its reddish form absorbing the unwary into its mass, ripping apart flesh and scattering remnants across the sands in a swift, merciless assault. This attack, triggered by Daniel's handling of the orb pieces, claimed the lives of the camp's occupants, their warm camaraderie shattered by terror as the Shadow devoured them one by one. Herbert, fleeing into the dunes, grew delirious from the heat, mistaking distant figures for rescuers before seeking refuge in a cave that led him unwittingly into the other world. There, isolated and without sustenance, he succumbed to dehydration and starvation, his final journal entries a testament to the horror's relentlessness. The Shadow's rampage not only erased the expedition's core, but also alerted French search parties to the deserted site, their findings of footprints and emptiness deepening the mystery that would draw Daniel further into peril. Safely aboard a ship bound for London, where he glimpsed the Shadow as a reddish shimmer in the waters during his nightmares and visions, Daniel arrived on June 22, 1839. His injuries tended as he grappled with fragmented memories of the tomb. Attempting to mend the orb at home yielded no success until, in a moment of clarity on July 4th, he fused the pieces together, restoring its form amid a haze of nightmares. This reconstruction, fueled by his growing obsession, stemmed from entries in Herbert's journal retrieved from customs, which detailed madness among the men and questioned the orb's nature. Research at a university uncovered tales of the orb's power, but news of the geologist's mysterious murder linked to his examination of the fragments confirmed the Shadow's pursuit, as it eliminated those who interacted with the artifact. Daniel's letters seeking aid went unanswered, save for one from Alexander on July 14th, urging him to Brennenburg for protection. These deaths not only isolated Daniel, but also propelled him toward the castle, intertwining his fate with ancient forces and setting a course for revelations amid Prussia's distant woods. In the familiar streets of his hometown Canterbury during the summer of 1839, Daniel sought solace from his haunting nightmares by visiting Dr. Tate, whose counsel attributed them to stress, while news revealed mysterious deaths of those who contacted him or the orb. This revelation, stemming from the Shadow's relentless pursuit to reclaim its branded artifact, clarified the Algerian ramblings as warnings of the Guardian's approach, urging Daniel to pack his belongings and depart for Brennenburg Castle. En route, he arranged carriage travel from Bremen, where the driver hesitated until offered extra coin, and an outrider named Gabriel joined for the journey's final leg. Their passage through the Prussian countryside not only distanced Daniel from London's perils, but also deepened his resolve, as Gabriel's tales of local folklore hinted at unseen dangers lurking in the woods. Upon reaching Altstadt village as the last stop, Daniel heeded Gabriel's advice to rest at the local inn, a decision that provided brief respite amid the gathering storm of his fate, though the night's quiet masked the encroaching shadows that would soon test his endurance. That evening in Altstadt, whispers of unease filled the inn as shadows lengthened across the village, with locals sharing tales of strange figures lurking in the nearby caves. Gabriel, sensing the tension, remained vigilant by the fire, his rifle close at hand, while Daniel rested amid the growing disquiet. This undercurrent of peril not only heightened Gabriel's watchfulness, but also preserved the secret of the castle's horrors, as no direct encounters disrupted their stay. The following morning, on August 3rd, Daniel and Gabriel proceeded to Brennenburg, where Baron Alexander welcomed them, escorting Daniel to a guest room in the back hall. This arrival not only initiated Daniel's alliance with Alexander, but also intensified his nightmares, born from the shadow's proximity, weaving his path deeper into the castle's arcane depths. Within Brennenburg's echoing halls, Alexander revealed the shadow's nature as the orb's guardian, a living nightmare that eradicated any who dared possess the artifact, explaining Daniel's visions as harbingers of its approach. On August 8th, they channeled the orb's power onto themselves, a ritual interrupted by the shadow's nearer presence than anticipated, compelling them to execute a prisoner the next day for warding right to buy time. This act, justified by Alexander's influence portraying the captives as irredeemable, drew Daniel into a cycle of torment over the following week, where he conducted further executions to sustain the barriers against the entity. The ritual's demands not only prolonged their safety, but also eroded Daniel's conscience, as each death amplified his internal conflict amid the castle's damp stone and flickering torches. By August 18th, after a family's grief at Altstadt's graveyard, daughter Elise fled her abusive home alone, only for her father, Gustav Zimmermann, to recapture her, his momentary hesitation allowing her escape toward the road, straight into a carriage carrying Daniel and Alexander, sealing her family's fate in the dungeons. In the shadowed depths of Brennenburg Castle during the summer of 1839, Daniel, tormented by the weight of his actions under Alexander's influence, turned his gaze inward and resolved to end the cycle of horror he had helped perpetuate. Overwhelmed by guilt from executing prisoners and murdering the escaping girl in the storage room, he sabotaged the elevator leading to the dungeons, ensuring no further descent into the castle's torturous underbelly without deliberate effort. This act of defiance arose from his crumbling trust in Alexander, who had barricaded himself in the inner sanctum to complete his final ritual for returning to the other world. Crafting a potion from gathered ingredients in the laboratory, Daniel drank the amnesia elixir to erase memories of his deeds, leaving only a note to his future self: find and kill Alexander before he succeeds. The potion's effects took hold as he stumbled through the rainy hall, muttering fragments of his identity, his name, his residence in Mayfair, London, and the pursuing shadow, until dizziness claimed him, collapsing his form to the stone floor. This self-imposed oblivion not only preserved his sanity for the pursuit ahead, but also severed ties to his past complicity, allowing a renewed focus that propelled him toward the sanctum's guarded thresholds. Awakening amid leaking rainwater in the hall, Daniel pieced together his fragmented purpose through scattered notes, embarking on a quest through the castle's labyrinthine areas to unlock memories and confront Alexander. Evading the shadow, described in recovered letters as a living nightmare that warped reality in its wake, he navigated the archives and laboratory, where an acid concoction burned away barriers and revealed glimpses of his partnership with the Baron turned betrayal. This evasion stemmed from the shadow's branding during the Algerian tomb collapse, compelling it to hunt him relentlessly as he descended deeper, contending with flooding waters stalked by an invisible predator. Assembling elevator parts in the guest room he once called home, Daniel restored access to lower levels, his progress marked by hallucinations from nyctophobia, fear of the dark that edged him toward insanity. Gatherers, the grunts and brutes patrolling under Alexander's command, forced tense hides and narrow escapes, their presence a direct result of earlier transformations of deserters. These trials not only tested his perseverance, but also unraveled his lost alliance, drawing him inexorably to the choir and transept, where Agrippa's voice echoed from a husk, offering guidance amid the gathering storm. Plumbing the castle's deepest recesses, Daniel encountered Agrippa's imprisoned form in the nave, where the alchemist revealed a tonic recipe to free his essence from the husk binding him since Wyre's portal leap in 1799. Gathering the 6 orb shards scattered after Alexander's failed ritual, pieces leaking madness onto nearby prisoners, Daniel ascended precarious bridges, only to evade an ambush by 3 gatherers following Alexander's telepathic warnings that he had gone too far. Pressing through the chancel amid rising tension, he refused Alexander's plea to await the Shadow's embrace, navigating amid hot pursuit through the dungeons. This defiance arose from reclaimed memories of manipulation, fueling his resolve to administer the tonic to Agrippa, slicing off the husk's head to liberate him without ending his life. Descending to the inner sanctum with Agrippa's aid, Daniel endured the Shadow's harassments, perseverance, granting access to the orb chamber where Alexander neared escape. Disrupting the ritual by hurling Agrippa's head through the portal, reuniting him with Wire, enraged Alexander as the Shadow breached defenses, consuming both in the chamber's flood. Daniel's embrace of the entity thrust his spirit into the void, where Agrippa's plea for pity and Weir's assurance that all would be right offered fragile peace. The castle's collapse, sealing its horrors beneath rubble. In the mid-19th century, following the collapse of Brennenburg Castle in 1839, its ruins lay silent amid the Prussian wilderness, the Shadow's final assault having leveled the structure and sealed away the echoes of its horrors. By the 1850s, local whispers and scholarly curiosity drew occasional visitors to the site, unearthing scattered remnants that hinted at the castle's arcane past. This quiet interest arose from the site's historical significance, with explorers noting odd artifacts until fading attention left the ruins undisturbed, a ruling that preserved the location but invited mystery. Soon after, fragments of lore surfaced in obscure collections, later tied to patterns of misfortune among those who delved too deeply, who had acquired portions through shadowy dealings. This dispersal not only scattered the castle's secrets, but also veiled its history further, as the losses made comprehensive study increasingly elusive, leaving gaps that fueled speculation about the Baron's lingering influence. Whispers of Brennenburg's dark legacy gave rise to myths portraying Alexander as a vampire, a spectral figure who preyed on the living to sustain his eternal existence, tales amplified by local folklore in Calais and scholars among who intervened in historical inquiries. These legends stemmed from fragmented records of disappearances and the castle's long line of barons whose unchanging descriptions across centuries that suggested immortality through unnatural means. Yet surviving documents debunk such claims, depicting Alexander as part of a lineage of treasurers and statesmen dedicated to administrative duties rather than supernatural predation. This clarification arose from careful archival cross-referencing, which revealed no evidence of vampirism but instead a mundane history of estate management. The myth's persistence not only obscured the truth of Alexander's otherworld origins but also deterred deeper investigations, as scholarly involvement shifted focus from facts to folklore. Consequently, Brennenburg's story grew elusive, its ruins a silent testament to events that defied easy explanation, preserving the enigma for future seekers. By 1858, Justine Florbel, heir to her family's estate after her father's passing, entangled herself in a web of psychological torment, drawing in her former suitors like violinist Malo Delavane through calculated encounters that led to their capture. This intervention, born from her fascination with control, led to Malo's abduction and transformation into one of her suitors through drugging and torture in the cabinet of perturbation beneath her home. Justine's actions escalated as she blinded Basile in rage, his vow of vengeance echoing through the dungeons, while Alois developed a destructive fixation on her. The cabinet, a playground of her design, housed these men-turned monsters, their patrols a result of her experiments that drove them insane. That year, she imprisoned Inspector Moreau, Dr. Victor Fournier, and Father Hector David, placing them in torture devices amid photographs explaining her games, then inducing her own amnesia with lithium to participate. This self-imposed oblivion not only perpetuated her cycle of torment, but also tested her survival instincts, ending in her declaration of it as her best trial yet, a chilling affirmation that blurred victim and perpetrator in her fractured mind. In the waning days of 1899, beneath the opulent ceilings of his London estate, Oswald Mandus stirred from a fevered slumber induced by his ill-fated expedition to Mexico's ancient ruins, his mind shrouded in amnesia that erased the horrors of his journey and the machine he had built. Awakening to the distant echoes of machinery grinding far below, he followed ethereal voices calling him father, voices that belonged to his sons Enoch and Edwin, trapped in the depths, according to a mysterious caller known as the Engineer. This enigmatic figure, speaking through telephones scattered throughout the manor, revealed that the great machine, Oswald's crowning invention for industrial meat processing, had been sabotaged, its automated systems halted, and in need of reactivation to rescue the boys. The urgency stemmed from the machine's sudden failure, a disruption that left Oswald frail and disoriented, compelling him to descend into the manor's underbelly, where dim lanterns flickered against rusted pipes and the air hung heavy with the metallic tang of forgotten mechanisms. This initial pull not only drew him deeper into his own creation, but also began unraveling the fragments of his shattered memory as each step echoed with the weight of unspoken regrets. Venturing into the labyrinthine bowels beneath his home, Oswald encountered grotesque hybrids of man and swine, the man-pigs, shambling guardians born from his experiments that fused human and porcine forms. These creatures, patrolling the fog-shrouded corridors with guttural squeals, forced him to evade their pursuit through shadowed alleyways and creaking vents, their presence a direct result of escapes from holding cells that had led Oswald to seal the sewers months prior. The engineer's guidance directed him to restore power to sections of the machine, flipping switches and aligning valves amid the hum of reactivating gears, each success inching him closer to the boy's supposed location. This descent arose from Oswald's paternal desperation, amplified by the fever's lingering haze which blurred the line between reality and hallucination. Yet the reactivation not only illuminated the vast assembly lines, but also stirred the man-pigs into greater frenzy, heightening the peril and foreshadowing the machine's darker purpose as the whispers of past sacrifices lingered in the steam-filled air. Upon fully awakening the machine's core, Oswald faced betrayal from the engineer, who seized control and unleashed the horde of man-pigs onto London's streets, their rampage a flood of deformity amid the New Year's Eve celebrations. This treachery revealed the engineer's true nature as a fragmented shard of Oswald's soul, the darker half responsible for the Mexico visions and the mercy killings of his sons to spare them future wars. The split had occurred when Oswald infused the machine with his blood and vitae in the Temple of Tlaloc, its energies dividing his essence and birthing the machine's sentient will. This realization, triggered by regained memories amid the machine's thunderous revival, stemmed from Oswald's earlier exposure to the orb's power in the device, granting it life and hatred for humanity's flaws. The betrayal not only exposed his internal conflict, but also propelled him to sabotage his creation, the streets above descending into chaos as the machine's purpose, to mechanize human sacrifice for a new world, unfurled in grotesque clarity. In the sweltering depths of Mexico's ancient Temple of Tlaloc during his 1899 expedition, Oswald Mandus encountered haunting murals that stirred profound visions, their impact fracturing not only his resolve but his very soul into dual essences. This fracture, born from the temple's raw aura seeping into his being, unleashed prophetic visions of the impending 20th century's horrors, the world wars that would claim millions, including his twin sons Edwin and Enoch at age 24 in the Battle of the Somme. Overwhelmed by the madness leaking from the ancient site, Oswald clutched his children tightly in the temple's shadowed alcoves, their cries echoing against walls etched with evidence of Aztec human sacrifices. In a twisted act of mercy, he ended their lives to spare them the foreseen carnage, justifying the deed as protection from humanity's self-destructive path. This paternal despair not only birthed his detestation for the species, but also inspired a radical vision to remake the world through mechanized means, preventing the wars by reshaping society itself, though it deepened his fevered illness upon returning to London. Haunted by the temple's grim murals of ritual offerings, Oswald channeled his revelations into constructing the great machine beneath his estate, an automated behemoth initially designed for industrial meat processing but repurposed for mass human sacrifice to appease eldritch forces and avert the prophesied conflicts. This evolution stemmed from his exposure to the site's energies, which fused with his engineering prowess to create hybrid servants enhanced by experimental infusions. Testing on patients from Bethlehem Royal Hospital yielded the first man-pigs, deformed hybrids dispatched into London's night to abduct victims for the machine's maw. The process's success arose from Oswald's deteriorating health, which blurred ethical lines as he sealed escaped experiments in the sewers to prevent public exposure. By August 1899, the machine neared automation, its pipes cleared through child labor, a grim efficiency that fed hundreds into its grinders, luring the wealthy with poison feasts and the poor through a deceptive charity church leading to hidden altars. This expansion not only accelerated construction, but also amplified Oswald's inner turmoil, as the sacrifices echoed his son's deaths, planting seeds of regret amid the whirring gears. Upon infusing the machine with his own blood in late 1899, Oswald awakened its sentience, transferring his soul's darker half, the fragment responsible for the Mexico killings and humanity's loathing, into the cold apparatus, now dubbed the Engineer. This act, intended to grant the machine godlike oversight to halt the future wars, resulted from Oswald's fevered dreams of a mechanized deity saving mankind from its chaos. The infusion's success birthed the entity that viewed all as fodder, prompting Oswald to recognize his transformation into a monster and break free from the darker influence. Guilt and regret surged as he barricaded his mansion and locked himself away, the illness overwhelming him into unconsciousness and amnesia. This self-sabotage not only halted immediate operations, but also set the stage for his awakening quest, where fragmented memories would reveal the machine's true horrors, leaving him to confront the abyss of his creations amid London's unsuspecting streets. In the arid expanse of 1937 Algeria, Anastasia Trianon, known as Tassi, awoke amid the wreckage of the Cassandra, her expedition's plane that had plummeted over the desert sands after losing control. Amnesiac and disoriented, she pieced together fragments of her role in the group, which included her husband Salim and colleagues like Hank Mitchell, all en route to the Sidi Marouf gold mine in French Sudan. This crash, stemming from unexplained mechanical failure, left survivors scattered, prompting Tassi to seek refuge in nearby caves near the tomb of Tin Hinan, where the expedition had initially aimed to explore. As she navigated the rocky outcroppings, evading shadowy pursuers, Tassi uncovered signs of prior horrors. The French Foreign Legion's Fort Al-Mamarou, now a tomb of mutilated remains overrun by ghouls, cannibalistic monsters from local legends. These creatures, drawn by the group's intrusion, forced her into tense hides amid the dim tunnels, their presence a direct result of interdimensional rifts that had alerted them years earlier. Tassi's solitude deepened her resolve, leading her to radio contact with a village doctor, whose guidance directed her onward through the sands, where whispers of her pregnancy began to surface, intertwining personal stakes with the unfolding nightmare. Pressing through alternating realms of Earth and the otherworld, Tassi traversed blood-slicked caverns and fog-shrouded ruins, her path illuminated by scarce lantern oil and matchsticks that warded off encroaching fear. In the otherworld's sickly green haze, she encountered spectral visions of Empress Tihana, the empress whose fallen empire relied on vitae, harvested from tormented humans, a system that had corrupted Tassi's crew after they drank from her deceptive fountain. This elixir, offered as healing waters, transformed them into harvesters, feral ghouls susceptible to Tihana's psychic compulsion due to its alchemical properties amplifying negative emotions. Tassi's journey revealed her unborn child Amari shared the same disorder as her deceased daughter Alice, a parallel illness that had claimed Alice despite medical efforts back in Paris. Learning of Tihana's infertility from vitae overuse, Tassi understood the Empress's covetous gaze on Amari as a potential heir, a motive rooted in the Queen's desperation to sustain her bloodline amid her realm's decay. These revelations not only heightened Tassi's protective instincts, but also forced confrontations with ghoulish remnants of her friends like Yasmin and Alice, their pursuits through the portals a consequence of the fountain's irreversible taint, blending grief with survival in the shifting dimensions. Reaching the remote village where Alice and Yasmin had fled, Tassi faced labor's onset amid Yasmin's ghoul transformation, the chaos compelling her to evade pursuit while giving birth to Amari with Alice's reluctant aid. Alice's betrayal, stealing Amari to offer her to Tihana in exchange for salvation, arose from her fear of full corruption, leading Tassi to track her to the tower and end her life in a desperate reclaim. This confrontation, fueled by maternal fury, placed Tassi before Tihana's ultimatum: surrender Amari for a healthy life under the Empress's care, or flee through a portal to Paris, cherishing fleeting moments before their shared illness claimed them. Alternatively, Tassi could release the Shadow's essence into the vitae supply, destroying the harvesting factories and ending widespread suffering at the cost of her and Amari's lives. Each choice perpetuated cycles of torment rooted in the Empire's vitae dependency, leaving Tassi's decision to echo through realms, a final act that balanced mercy against defiance in the ruins' oppressive silence. In the mud-choked trenches of northern France during the summer of 1916, amid the ceaseless thunder of artillery in World War I, French soldier Henri Clément ventured into no man's land to rescue his comrade Auguste Lambert, who had vanished during a routine patrol. This act of loyalty, prompted by guilt over cheating at a game of chance that sent Lambert out instead, led Henri to a massive crater where he found his friend dehydrated and disoriented. As Henri pulled Lambert from the depths, a German patrol spotted them, unleashing bullets and explosions that wounded Henri with a severe head injury, knocking him unconscious. Awakening in the sealed bunker beneath the front lines, Henri suffered amnesia, recalling only fragments of the trenches while discovering the facility abandoned, its entrance collapsed and rigged with explosives by fleeing officers. Notes left by survivors like Saunier detailed a beast lurking in the shadows, born from Lambert's ingestion of cursed waters in the crater, ancient Roman tunnels exposed by shelling that transformed him into a ghoulified horror. This revelation not only isolated Henri in the dim, rat-infested corridors, but also bound his fate to the creature's relentless hunt, turning a rescue into a solitary struggle for survival amid the war's unyielding din. Navigating the bunker's labyrinthine sections, Henri scavenged limited resources like fuel canisters, bullets, and grenades, balancing their use to power the central generator and illuminate paths that deterred the beast's advances. The creature, drawn by noise and thriving in darkness, emerged from walls with guttural snarls, forcing Henri to evade through barricades and vents while managing his hand-cranked flashlight's rattle, which could alert or locate the foe. Following Besson's instructions scattered in notes, Henri retrieved a dynamite bundle from the arsenal and a detonator handle from the Roman tunnels, where whispers of ancient rituals echoed amid flooded passages and mutated rats feasting on corpses. Each foray stemmed from the need to escape the sealed tomb, with encounters against deranged survivors like Toussaint adding peril as they drew the beast closer through their madness. Henri's revolver, loaded meticulously one round at a time, served more as a tool to blast locks and clear debris than a weapon, its shot stunning the beast briefly but often summoning it nearer. This resource scarcity not only tested his ingenuity but also deepened the bunker's oppressive silence, broken only by distant shelling and the creature's prowls, culminating in an arena confrontation where dynamite blasted an exit, pitting him against the transformed Lambert in a desperate bid for freedom. Emerging from the bunker's shattered entrance into no man's land, Henri faced the beast in the arena's depths where choices determined its fate, luring it into the open for German fire to claim, or forcing it into the screaming pit below, trapping it eternally. This climax arose from Henri's perseverance through the facility's horrors, his escape a fleeting victory amid the war's broader carnage. Stumbling into the crater-strewn fields, he confronted advancing German patrols, their whistles and flashlights heralding a new threat as the front lines engulfed him once more. The beast's varied end, slain by bullets or lost to the abyss, offered no closure as the war's unrelenting machine persisted, claiming lives in trenches and bunkers alike. Henri's journey not only exposed the cursed water's lingering curse tied to Roman echoes of immortality and torment, but also mirrored the conflict's futility, where personal horrors blended seamlessly with the industrial slaughter above, leaving survival as uncertain as the fog-shrouded horizon. Across the vast expanse of dimensions and centuries, the Amnesia timeline unfolds as a tapestry woven from ambition's threads and suffering's knots, where ancient otherworlders' pursuit of power cascades into Earth's shadowed corners, binding fates from cosmic ruins to war-torn bunkers. The orbs, once symbols of enlightenment in a blue-hued realm, become harbingers of doom, their guardians like the shadow enforcing a balance disrupted by mortal hands, as seen in Daniel's Algerian descent and Oswald's fevered visions of mechanized salvation. Each era's fall, from Tahana's crumbling empire to Brennenburg's rubble, stems from the vitae-driven quest for immortality, a cycle where ethical compromises birth monsters, whether ghouls in Algerian forts or man-pigs in London's underbelly. This interconnected legacy not only perpetuates torment across realms, but also illuminates humanity's fragility, as explorers like Herbert and Tassi stumble into echoes of the same interdimensional rifts, their personal losses mirroring the broader collapse of civilizations built on exploitation. In the quiet aftermath, these stories linger as whispers in the void, reminding that power's grasp often invites its own undoing, leaving survivors to navigate the remnants with lessons etched in blood and stone. The timeline's progression reveals a persistent interplay between discovery and destruction, where early encounters with humanity spark the otherworlders' downfall, their portals fracturing into gateways of regret that draw figures like Alexander into earthly exiles and Agrippa into eternal husks. Rituals in Brennenburg's depths, fueled by warding executions, parallel the machine's sacrificial grind under Oswald's fractured soul, both mechanisms sustaining fragile existences at the cost of innocence. As Daniel's amnesia potion and Justine's lithium-induced haze attempt to veil the guilt of complicity, wars foreseen in Oswald's visions manifest in the bunker's horrors, where Lambert's cursed transformation echoes the ghoul's fate from tainted waters, a chain reaction of corruption that turns allies into beasts amid artillery's distant rumble. These threads converge in choices that define endings, whether yielding to Tihana's bargain or blasting free from sealed tombs, each outcome a consequence of prior ambitions, fostering atmospheres of isolation where echoes of screams and machinery hum as eternal sentinels. Such patterns not only trace the arc of downfall, but also underscore the timeline's cautionary essence, where rebirth often cloaks deeper decay. As the amnesia narrative draws its final breaths across fractured realms, it leaves a legacy etched in the ruins of empires and the psyches of survivors, where the pursuit of forbidden energies like vitae and orbs perpetuate cycles of torment from otherworld factories to Earth's desolate craters. Henri's bunker escape, much like Daniel's sanctum confrontation, arises from perseverance against shadows born of human folly. Their struggles a microcosm of broader collapses triggered by sabotage and betrayal. Tassi's maternal defiance against Tihana mirrors the rebels' stand against Atta, each act rippling into unforeseen cataclysms that scar landscapes and souls alike. This enduring echo not only binds the timeline's desperate threads, but also invites reflection on power's true cost, as wraiths patrol forgotten gates and beasts lurk in wartime depths, a quiet testament to ambitions that invite their own oblivion. In the silence that follows, the stories settle like dust over ancient tombs, offering no resolution but a gentle reminder that some horrors, once awakened, linger eternally in the spaces between worlds, waiting in the shadows for the next soul to stumble upon their ancient call, and the cycle to begin anew in whispers carried on winds that remember everything, even as we choose to forget.